let's get into it. So today we're talking about building trust in a digital world, balancing friendliness and trust. So this is something that I think we all have problems with at different times. If I'm looking up, I'm looking at the presentation. If I'm looking down, I'm looking at you beautiful people. Um, but essentially, especially as AI becomes more and more relevant, as that automation, that remote work environment, having that trust, having that stickiness with the clients is going to be extremely important. That's really what we're talking about here is, balancing that friendliness and that professionalism. So everybody knows me, I think. No new faces here except for Isna. I don't know if I've met Isna before. Oh, we have a bunch more participants here. Who else is here? Shannon, can you see if offer people the opportunity to join? I think Stephanie will probably join. Don't know about everybody else, but
Well, because they need to join for the polls, don't they?
uh no, they're in the attendees, so they're watching, but they're not in here able to interact. So we'd like everybody to be added as a panelist if they want to accept. If they don't want to accept, they don't have to. You okay figuring that out, Shannon?
I am, but stupid little boxes are opening up here. I've sent one to Isna,
Isn't it?
and then it says change role to panelist. Oh my gosh, how many steps does a person need to do here? Hang on.
Can't you just like select them all, change all to panelists?
I don't know, man. You would think, but I feel like the Zoom app is just being a pain in the butt. It's okay. I will just manually go to each one and do
Thank
it.
you. Thank
Okay.
you. All right. So I am the founder of CAT Accounting Solutions. We were the winners of the 2023 Firm of the Year from CPB, one of our biggest feathers in our cap that we've ever had. I was top 100 pro advisor for 21, 22, 23, and top 50 for 20 international for 24, 25, and apparently 26. So I never actually checked the official thing. Apparently it came in email and I missed it. Um, I was a member of the inaugural Intuit Accountants Council. So I've had a long-standing relationship with them. If anyone is wondering what that is, it's essentially a group of accountants from a variety of sizes and types of practices who use QuickBooks, or at the beginning, there was some who used mainly competitors to try and like understand the direction that they wanted to take their software. It was a very good opportunity. And from that, I was able to meet a lot of fantastic people, and it really like jump-started Kata. So that was a huge thing I'm very grateful for. Was the recipient of the Inspire Accountant Award. I'm an elite pro advisor, QBO advanced certified, considered a thought leader, and we are blessed and grateful to be trusted advisors for several bookkeeping firms. That is, we're their accountant. And, to have that kind of trust from a bookkeeper is phenomenal. So today's agenda. What is professionalism? We're going to talk about that. Some common communication styles, digital empathy framework, setting boundaries with grace, the anatomies of a frustrating interaction. We'll talk about some strategies in there with the do's and don'ts. Then we'll talk about we'll have a summary and questions and discussion. So first of all, I'd like to kind of open it up here to see what, in your opinions, does it mean? What does professionalism mean? And I know Jake and I have talked about this a lot, and we've had some interesting conversations with various AI platforms about this. But I'm curious, without consulting ChatGPT or Claude or anything, what do you guys think? No comments. Okay. So nobody here is a professional, then?
I
We're
have a
working
few
on
comments, but
I'm
I'm
not a
probably not
professional,
the
but I
best.
do like
I
it.
don't know if I would consider myself a full-fledged professional.
Well, what do you think it means to be a professional? Like if you don't consider yourself one,
Um,
what do you think it means to be a professional?
I mean, personally, I think being a professional means that you are good at, you know what you're doing, you're good at it, and you know how to communicate well with people, and you have empathy for people. That's how I view professionalism. Like being empathetic and discreet and kind, but also putting them at ease. Like that's what I like about professionalism. But when I was, studying to be an accountant, professionalism had a lot more rules around what you could and couldn't do, and like a lot of um, like how you dressed and how you presented yourself and how you talked to people and if you use Mr. in front of. So that's sort of how when I first started, that was what was considered professional. So I
Yeah.
think it's changed a lot for sure.
100% it has
Yeah.
changed a lot. Yeah, I mean, now you get professionals in all walks of life. I mean, I see there's at least a couple of accountants on here, and I don't see anybody wearing a tie, though I can't see Alan's neck perfectly, so maybe he is wearing a tie. Although I
Yeah.
think that I saw you're just wearing a collared shirt. It looked
Yeah.
nice and classy, but no tie.
I was just going to make a comment there. I just tried to type something out here. As a professional, I think is someone who acts with integrity within the boundaries of what they're expected to do. And those boundaries may not be understood by your clients. In fact, they often might not. You might have to give them news they don't like or inform them of opportunities they don't know they didn't have. So to kind of step above just simply doing a job and representing your profession, kind of
Yeah.
using the same term again.
Having a
Uh,
degree of independence and knowledge that you can bring to the table and the ability to say no. And I think particularly in the CPA world, that particularly in employment, that can be quite challenging. And I think in bookkeeper world, I've had many conversations with bookkeepers. Oh, the client tells me to do it, I just do it. And it's like that's I would say is not at the level of professionalism. That's, kind of like the employee
yeah,
perspective.
exactly.
But then if you are employed by somebody, how do you handle those kind of things? So we're going to talk about that a bit. Tracy said it's having ethics. I definitely agree that ethics are a big part of it. Stephanie says being an expert in your field, having integrity, and behaving in a manner that is professional, 100%. And I have seen some bad behavior in the past from people who should have been professionals or more professional in their interactions. Alan, at its core, at its core, professionalism, acting with the integrity that is expected with what you do. All right, where are we here? Diane, acting for the interest of your client and aligned with conformity. Excellent. Carol, being bold to say no to client actions with explanation and be willing to walk away. I think sometimes that's the hardest part is that ability to walk away.
That is the hardest part. I actually had a conversation with my husband, who's a semi-retired accountant, and I've got a client who seems to have turned his financial problems into my financial problems. I had to ask him to pay me yesterday because I've got a business credit card that is maxed out because he hasn't paid me for his subscriptions for QBO and QB payroll. And it's like, I can't be funding your business.
No.
How do you do that? How do you deal with that? It's like I was prepared to send him an email saying, look, your two companies owe me $2,000 and I'm not prepared to continue to provide you with services when you don't pay me as frequently as I run payroll for your staff.
I think
I can answer
we
that
have some
one.
hands up. Let's go to I have some things to say about that, but let's go to Tracy first.
This was many, many years ago when I was still working in industry, and I had gone for a job interview for a senior accountant position. And one of the interview questions that they had asked me is if your CEO comes to you and asks you to do a questionable transaction so that the financial statements are represented a little bit better for the end of the month, how would you respond to that?
That's a good question.
That question kind of left me a little shocked, and I ultimately, in the end, I didn't accept the position because it was like, that's an interesting question to ask. It was like, why did you ask? And it was like, I don't know if I really want to be put in that position to go back to the CEO and say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Because that would be me. I like to be compliant And if somebody does something questionable, I will fight it and I will say, I'm sorry, I can't.
How did you answer that question in the
I
moment?
just basically said if it was something that would materially impact those financial statements, I would probably go back following a code of ethics, and I would go back and I would suggest that that is not the right approach.
All right. How about you, Carol?
So on the payment end of it, I changed my engagement agreement years ago because I used to follow that because I was billing on an hourly basis. I bill at the end of the month, wait to get paid. Through learning techniques with all you professional people that I love, we switched to Rotessa and Pat Agreement, and it's in our engagement agreement. We will not take on a client if they will not do Pat Agreement. And so I invoice on the first of the month. If they're a large client, I might do first and 15th, but it's due in 5 days and the money comes directly out of their bank account. End of story, full stop, period.
Awesome.
I don't
Matt?
work for free.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say I don't work for free.
Fair. And nobody should. Matt?
Well, and it was after that fight. I had a client through COVID. So, of course, when we switched to the twice a month to help the clients through COVID, and he didn't want to go on Pat agreement, but he promised he'd pay me. I said, as long as you pay me, every time you pay the payroll people, you're paying me. And I invoiced on first and 15th. And then it started to slide, and after a couple of years, some of them took up 8 months to pay me. So I had enough in a retainer to cover running payroll, and that's all I was doing. He was months behind. And then when he finally said, well, what's going on? I said, well, you have to pay me.
Yeah, it's that simple.
Yeah. And when he
Matt?
paid for the August invoice in October, I
Hmm.
said, thank you. And now we'll get your books caught up.
Matt?
Yeah.
Carol stole all the thunder.
Ah,
uh, uh, I appreciate that Carol says she does the first and the 15th, but same thing. I've definitely noticed in the short time that I've been around, I too have Rotessa as a part of the onboarding process. And what I've noticed is clients have been extremely comfortable knowing that their subscription is away from services rendered. So we sign up the PAT agreement so that we actually can take care of subscriptions outside of services. And services could still be debited through Rotessa, but we give people the options whether like subscriptions are not an option. That has to be a PAT agreement through Rotessa. I'm not paying for their QuickBooks, period. I'm I'm the 24th. Like, so I appreciate Carol's doing the first and the 15th. My QuickBooks bill comes to me on the 24th. So I actually like invoicing all of the new services proactively upfront in advance. So the 24th is my magical day that I'm trying to do delayed charges or time activity. Like everything's happening on the 24th for me.
interesting. So I think we're hearing about patterns here is a big part of it. And I think just to address Stephanie's how she opened this kind of dialogue, I think having payment terms is important. Having a process is important. Having policies is important. But really, none of those things matter if you don't enforce your policies. You don't follow your processes. So one difficulty that I had is tend to be Mr. Nice Guy. Say, oh yeah, don't worry. Can pay us next week when you have more cash flow. So you know what? I just took it out of my hands. Now somebody else deals with collections. And we do have payment terms and we have very aggressive interest rates for late payments that start after 15 days. And we do terminate clients for non-payment and those kind of things. And to hear about this situation where the client, like where you were financially suffering, I hope that you're being compensated in excess of your fees to help deal with things like the interest that you pay on that credit card. Because that's not right. You're not a bank. You're not there to finance their business.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Luckily, I do get like I don't accumulate much in the way of service charges on that credit card. Mostly because the credit limit is so low, and I'm usually throwing money at it. Like I get paid by a client, I throw money on the card. I get paid by a client, I throw money on the card. So I mean, like maybe my interest is like $10 a month. But it's just that it really got my goat when
Mm-hmm.
for like the past month I've been sending him text messages, him emails. I've been sending him reminders out of QuickBooks Online saying, this invoice is outstanding. This is outstanding. You're now at $1,170 on this company and $733 on this company. And it's like I can't call him because he's like on the road all the time and in meetings. And he said yesterday, no point in sending me emails because I'm on the road. I can't look at them. And it's like, well, what the hell do you want me to do? I need
Hmm.
to get a hold of you. I can't get a hold of you except to send you a text message saying, please call me as soon as you can. And, cross my fingers and hold my breath that you're going to call me today because this is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Those kind of professional situations. I'd like to talk more about this at the end, but I want to get through some of these. Like, there's not a lot of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah, like we can address that later.
but
It's
we
just
have a
like,
whole, like, I think we're going to have extra time to chat about these things. And this is an interesting situation. I have a lot more to say about. So let's do the poll question. Now, we don't have official poll questions set up with Zoom because Tanya has to catch her plane. So we're just going to put your answers in the chat. So, which style of communication do you feel you use most often? Straight to the point, professional and concise, friendly and casual, or radio silence until I need something, and it depends how I'm feeling. All right, so we're gonna save all these answers so that people can get their CPD. Interesting to see, and I'm not seeing any C's. And I am right there with Shannon. It depends on how I'm feeling. I really try for the friendly and casual most of the time. Occasionally I'll be straight to the point, but sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I have to step away and not communicate to like whoosah myself until I can be more appropriate. I know it's too bad that Tanya's not here because she has a whole process she used to use, and now she has those conversations with like what did she call her thing? Charlie, her chat GPT. So,
I used to call mine Charlie too.
oh, that's
I switched away to Claude though, so I just call it Claude.
yeah. We use Claude and Gemini mainly in our firm. So I agree. Somebody said this at the beginning. Professionalism is a lot less about appearances these days. I think appearances matter to a degree, but it depends on the type of professional and the situation you're walking into. It is about being reliable and competent and maintaining your ethical code and knowing what to do and what the right thing to do is and pushing back when somebody asks you to not do the right thing or to do something that you know is wrong.
Yeah, I have a
I
story about that too.
Authenticity matters a lot, and I think this is somewhere where big corps tend to fall down. Does your external messaging, does is are those your actual values? Do you live and breathe those things, or do you just say them for good PR? And I think that really kind of creates a big demarcation for people who are truly professional between and people who aren't. I've noticed a lot of firms when they start up, they're all about driving revenue growth, and sometimes they fall down on delivering what they've promised to deliver. And yes, they have a big growing business and they build this asset up, and then they sell a book of mess to some unsuspecting buyer, and then they go and they do it again. I really don't think that's professional, and I think that really damages the reputation of the profession as a whole. And especially when it's somebody like a CPA doing something like that or a CPB doing something like that, I think it's really bad. So, this is an interesting formula I came across when I was doing some research for this. Credibility, so that's are you legitimate? Are you qualified? Do you know what you're talking about? Reliability, do you do what you say you're going to do by when you said you're going to do it? And intimacy, that is really just having that relationship and that knowledge of the client and their business over your own self-awareness or self-orientation. That's what builds trust. So I just found this very interesting as a formula to quote unquote build trust, but I definitely felt like there was some merit to it. So this is according to Google Gemini. I actually asked Gemini Claude and ChatGPT the same question. They were all very similar in their responses. So professionalism is a consistent alignment between your values, conduct, and the standards of your craft, regardless of who is watching. And that's the big thing, regardless of who is watching. Doesn't everybody love getting that file from an accountant and the accountant has booked like one journal entry every month for the credit card and one journal every month for the bank, and then they do a handful of adjusting journal entries at the end of the year, and you have no way of tracing anything. Nothing is done on an accrual basis. It's because nobody was
It
watching.
drives me bats.
Absolutely. Drives me nuts too because it's not bookkeeping. You need to capture everything when you're doing the books. That's every movement of money, every transaction. So I think that's really the key thing is who, regardless of who is watching. And let's be frank, in our remote world, most of the time nobody's watching. And the client doesn't know what they're watching for. So they're just blindly trusting. And that
Yeah.
trust can be violated and damaged when people do take shortcuts and do those things that aren't up to the standard of the craft. So, according to Gemini, professionalism is comprised of four main categories: reliability and accountability, consistency, ownership, and punctuality. Is it complete? Is it correct? Is it on time? Specialized knowledge and competence, mastery, continual learning, and confidence without ego. The continual learning mastery, that's actually what kata is. Is a kata is mastering a technique through a practice, and through the repeated practice of it. And that's how you achieve mastery. Emotional intelligence, it's poise, diplomacy, empathy, reading the room, reading the feelings, things along those lines. Professional image and etiquette, appropriateness, communication and boundaries, the way that you present yourself. So, if I'm going out to, I don't know, a baseball game with some friends, I'm going to dress and I'm going to behave differently than if I'm going to get connected. However, I'm
Absolutely.
always going to have a degree of professionalism because as a business owner, as somebody who represents this company, whether I'm working or not, people can see that. And you really wouldn't want somebody, I don't know, catching you on, I don't know, you're putting social media out about your latest inappropriate exploit on online for everybody to see. That can really damage your professionalism. And companies have gotten a lot more about that. Like in our hiring process, one of the first things is to connect with us on one of our channels that we use for social media. And that's twofold. One, to show us that you actually know what social media is and how to use it. And two, so we can go and see if you're a complete idiot or not on your profile. So, because we've had that happen, and we've had people who they claim something and then they connect with us on LinkedIn, and their LinkedIn is completely different from what they told us. And it's like, well, you lied to us. So you're right off the bat, you're disqualified, for instance. Any thoughts about this? Because these ideas came from two different AIs. ChatGPT largely agreed, but what do you guys think? Is there anything you would change about this? Anything that's missing?
Um, I think part of professionalism is also knowing when to push back, i.e., somebody wants you to do something borderline or sketchy, and saying, "Hey, look, this is not like," and it's also like if they're going to do something borderline or sketchy, it's being able to tell them in language A so that they understand, B that's not insulting, like maybe they didn't know it was borderline or sketchy, and being able to say, hey, look, this is not the industry standard for handling this particular type of situation or transaction. And it's also, I think, being able to say no. um Sometimes, especially if um we're coming from an employee um
That's
uh
the hardest.
situation or mindset, and I find sometimes I'm still thinking like that. It's like, oh, I got to do this and I got to do, we have to be able to say no, or I don't have time to do that for you right now, and be able to um, say, look, uh, I've got prior commitments or whatever. I'm not able to get that to that for you for a couple of days. For whatever reason, and like sometimes we bookkeepers can forget that. I think more than anything else, because a lot of us do come from industry rather
Mhm.
than independent. Like even if an accountant's worked at a CPA firm, they're not like a corporate accountant. There's a different mindset in being at a firm than being in a corporate environment. And my career started in a corporate environment in administration, and then I gained my skills and I moved into accounting, payroll, and administration as an office manager, but it was still in a corporate environment.
Mhm.
After my last marriage collapsed, I spent 6 years working at a CPA firm, but I was still put in that corporate
Corporate.
environment
Yeah.
pigeonhole.
Yeah.
And I find myself, even to this day, like having to say, wait a second, I got to say no to this. I don't have time to do this right now. It's like me, sometimes it's not no, it's not right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's one of the hardest parts is when you're working for a company and the boss gives you something like that. And one of my favorite things about having started Kata was we can fire the jerks. It's somebody like we did this year. There was somebody who was not, we've had two cases. One is a super nice guy, just values didn't align. His communication was terrible. And we've given him like a notice, like we're just going to stop billing you, but you have until this date to submit what you need to submit, or we're cutting ties completely. And you have until this date to pay your outstanding bills and blah, blah, blah. And, he had no problem with paying the bills, almost caught up. There's one more payment to go, but he hasn't done anything. So it just tells me that you don't want you don't want to salvage this relationship. It's not worth the effort in your perspective. So it's not a good fit. The other one, the guy would show up but wouldn't be there, would be non-communicative a lot, and things like that, and just really made the bookkeeper feel terrible. And so after a while, it was just like, enough's enough. This is not in alignment with our values. You're not behaving professionally. We're going to let you go. I don't know who had their hand up first. I'm going to go to Jake because it looks like he had it first, but
Sure. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Appreciate it. Good presentation so far. I'm quite enjoying it. It's great, very cool. And I did love that equation. That equation was very neat. Good stuff. But what I wanted to say was about professionalism. It is important to recognize the universal level of it. Like different people are going to have their own versions of this word, of this subject, of this objective. And to be professional, I think you have to recognize that part of that person. It's kind of more about than the profession, but it's more about like who they are as a whole kind of person. Is what I think, my opinion,
uh,
and it's like
to,
that
to,
universal kind of realm. If that makes sense.
I'm not quite sure I'm following you. Um,
Well, so what I'm saying is that like an artist is going to have a different set of professional
oh,
traits than.
absolutely. And there could be cultural differences as well,
Yeah, so but
right?
professionalism, I think the whole point of the professionalism is to have like a universal language that can be used with any person. Like it can be like it's very simple, right? My opinion.
I
My
get what you're saying. I don't know if the universal is reality though, because for instance, in different countries, different cultures, professionalism is going to mean different things.
right,
Like for instance, having lived in Japan, having a lot of experience there, there's literally a uniform. The salary man wears to work. And yes, it is salary man because they're still very patriarchal society there, but it's, black suit, black tie, white dress shirt. You show up with a red tie, it's like, who the heck are you?
right,
Right? Like,
right,
who do you think you are? Kind of thing, right? And then in another country, like, I mean, things have gotten a lot more casual, particularly in places like California. People show up to meetings dressed like this and be the best dressed person in the room, things like that.
Right.
So, Matt, what did you want to say?
I actually really like Jake's comment. I kind of get where he's running with that one because if there was a theme song that I was hearing in my head as Jake was talking was Blurred Lines by Alan Thicke.
Mhm.
Uh, um, boundaries is what I wanted to speak to. And, it's really, I came from a past profession of being a mortgage broker, and boundaries was a very difficult thing to set up. People would engage you for money. Sometimes you had good things to say and you would issue approval. Sometimes you had hard things to say and it was decline. One of the hardest boundary expanding moments a client gave to me was they were in a process of trying to get a mortgage. Our team had sent everything off and now we were just in the hurry up and wait moment. And the client called me early in the morning and said, "Matt, have you done your job yet?" And I says, "Well, yeah, like we've done our job, but we're waiting." And we come from a small community, and this client said, "Well, maybe if you weren't up late at night playing poker till all hour, like 11 or 11:30 at night, maybe you'd be done your job already by now." And I realized that it's very difficult in a small community to have boundaries.
Mm.
And so in mortgage broker land, I didn't have a lot of clients challenge my boundaries. That was probably the hardest challenge I faced. But gosh, in bookkeeping, blurred lines. I cannot believe on the challenges that bookkeepers have on keeping firm boundaries. So speaking back to Jake, having that universal, like sometimes we have some blurred lines with some of our colleagues, just the comfort level on community and just knowing that we're feeling we all have the clients that are driving us crazy. So like that's kind of speaking to Jake, but yet we want to have those professional boundaries with our clients so that we are operating with like, using the word integrity or professionalism with boundaries. It's very hard to have solid boundaries and not blur those lines.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, for all the policies and processes we have, I still violate our policies from time to time. And Jake will hold me accountable to that too. And like you said, blurring those lines. And now you've opened up the door for the client to cross that boundary too. So, all right, I want to move on a bit. Just some different communication styles. These are ones more specific to our industry. So there are a lot more communication styles than this, but these were some of the ideas. And I really felt like I agreed with these. So like the robot, technical, cold, transactional, very like blunt, to the point, no banter, no small talk. You're a robot. The bestie, overly casual. Like you're gonna have a phone call, you're gonna spend the first 15 minutes catching up, no boundaries or forgets boundaries. And quite often they don't exude authority, legitimacy, credibility because of the way that they communicate. The avoider, and I can totally be this, especially when a client is giving me dread, and everybody knows that. Everybody has that client who you see the phone ring and you're like, send a voicemail. Because it's them, right? That's the avoider. That's when it comes out in me. Only reaching out when you need something, often reaching out when you need it like right now, leaving to the very last minute. No real relationship, almost no communication outside. I need this. And it becomes again a very transactional relationship. And finally, this is what I aim for. I'm not always this way, but I like to be this way. Warm and friendly, clear and concise, authentic but authoritative, the balanced advisor. That's really is what I think we all need to strive for. That's my opinion. What about other people? Does anybody else have any opinions about this or any style that you think is prevalent in our industry that is not included on
I
here?
think
If not,
the
it's
biggest thing
yep,
for me is knowing that today, even just in the name of my business, I used to think I needed to be there for my clients all the time.
on call.
On call. That was
Yep.
it. I was going to be the Carol on call business services that you could rely on all the time. And I used to have a client who literally I wouldn't hear from him all week, and he would phone me at 4 to 4:30 on Friday afternoon. And I'd be like, why? What do you need? What is so important? Oh, I just wanted to call you to ask, blah, 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 blah. Great, I'll take care of it on Monday. Like it was never anything that was an urgent thing. And it used to just drive me crazy. So I have, evolved. I have great boundaries today. And a lot of times I don't even answer the phone anymore, which is hard for me because it's like, oh, but no, like Tanya says, like you say, in bookkeeping, nothing's an emergency.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any rules? I see Diane said about somebody calling at 7:30 at night or 7:30 in the morning. Um, I like, does anybody else have any like self-directed rules, self-imposed rules about the phone and when you're going to answer or not? I'll tell you my thing, and I say this to everybody, is like, call me whenever you want. If I can answer, I will. If I can't, I'll call you back. So if a client calls, the earliest a client has ever called me was 8 a.m., but that's because they knew I started work at 8 a.m. usually. And they had something urgent on their mind, and that was fine. I had no problem answering the call and speaking to them for, about 5 minutes about that. But I do have clients who will call in the evening. If I can answer without removing myself from being present in whatever I'm doing, I will answer. More often than not, I let it go to voicemail and I call them back as kind of just a trigger that I'm not here to jump when you say jump. I'll call you back. I'll get back to you, but I'm not here to jump when you say jump. And the reason I believe doing this is because since the kids have come along, for those who don't know, we have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-month old, or I guess they're about 2 years apart. So 2 years, 4 months, and 5 months old. And ever since that's come, I haven't been able to keep proper office hours, right? So if I'm doing stuff and I need to speak to somebody at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, I'm not going to be shy about calling. I don't think it would be right for me to say, hey, I refuse to have to answer my phone after like 5 p.m., for instance. So that's just my philosophy on it. I like what you're doing there, Tracy. She started using the focus sleep, etc., on the phone because texts and calls were coming way too late, way too early. They can do what they want now, but I won't see those until office hours kick in. I am a big believer in not having notifications on. I'm a big, big believer in it. For professional things, I will have the little like symbol pop up between like my working hours, which I'm on do not disturb between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So they'll show up during that period, and it's up to me if I want to look at them. But my phone does not ding, bing, or whatever. The only thing is the ring. I do allow the phone to ring, but none of those other things are there. All right, let's keep going. So the digital empathy framework, and this is especially more and more important when we're dealing with online being remote. So active listening is very important. Showing that you're there, you're engaged, you're demonstrating emphasis, or you're demonstrating empathy as the person is speaking. That could be nodding when they're saying something that they want you to agree with, shaking your head when they're saying something we want to disagree with, mirroring the language back to them, even the body language, mirroring the body language back, but really listening actively to get that understanding and really have and keep that understanding. There's the contextual awareness, recognizing the true source of what's happening. So it could be a fear, could be a guilt, it could be shame. These are very common emotions when it comes to money. It could be something that's completely different. Let me give you a quick example. We have a neighbor who's going off the rails right now because she just got dumped. And, I have a little bit of empathy for her, but the way she's behaving is not appropriate. How are we going to strike that balance as a neighborhood to deal with that? But this happens with clients all the time, right? They just had a big fight with their husband. And now they're speaking to you and they're extra witchy today.
Spicy?
Feisty. Okay. All right. Okay. Feisty is a better word.
Spicy.
Spicy. It's a hot
Spicy.
tamale.
Good thing you weren't talking to me last week.
We did. I was here for a few minutes of that. But understanding where the pressure is coming from and being able to Maintain your own calmness when somebody else is trying to rile you up for an emotional response. Maintaining your own calm and demeanor and whatnot, and really trying to understand why they're behaving the way they are, what they really need. And sometimes they just, we all know, we all minored in psychology as bookkeepers, that that's part of the job, right? Is just listening to those kind of things and doing that. The next is the video first rule. Be on camera. Get your client on camera. It's humanizing. Somebody's off camera and on mute the whole time during a client meeting, they're not a good fit for us. It just tells us that they're going to be hard to communicate with. They're not really, they're there because they feel like they have to be there. They're not there because they want to be there, things like that. Oh my God, Sherry does actually have a minor in psychology. That's funny. For the video meetings, make sure that you have like a professional setting or professional environment. So, like, I wouldn't do this kind of webinar from like a noisy McDonald's. I wouldn't do it while I'm walking down the street from my cell phone, right? And I have had meetings like that where people are trying to sell me and they're like walking out of a bank and talking out of this on the cell phone and getting in the car and they're trying to sell me on something. It's just like, you didn't even make the time to actually have a proper meeting with me. This is like, it's just showing up. So, you know what? I'm not so keen on that. Monitor your body language, monitor your face. If you have resting witch face, good, maybe sit there and practice in the mirror a bit, things like that. Watch your closed off language, the confrontational nature of doing something like this, those kind of things can go a long way. The really, really effective at making connection if you're in a meeting with one individual is to mirror their body language. Every now and again, somebody will catch on to what you're doing, but for the most part, it just increases connection. And if somebody does catch on, they're like, "What are you doing?" It's just like, "Oh, I'm just empathizing. I'm just listening to what you say, trying to understand, things like that." But, all right, setting boundaries with grace, aka training your clients. Say no with grace. It sometimes it's very hard to say like no and slam the phone down. I've had those moments. I actually had those moments recently. But no, I'd love to help with that. Unfortunately, this falls out of our current scope of work. Let's see what we can do. And then give them a quote on that extra scope of work that they're asking for. I'm afraid that meeting you want is outside my normal business hours. How about an offer an alternative? It's always important that when you say no, that you try to find a positive resolution to it. Your communication channels, and this is something that I need to work on personally, clearly outline how communication will occur and what is and is not acceptable. On unacceptable channels, steer the client to the appropriate channels and provide the why. And this is something that I make this mistake all the time is I just need a quick note from this person, so I'll send them a text message. Well, that just gave them permission to text me business stuff. And I really need to better my habit with that. And that's just me being completely transparent about that. I know Jake and I have had conversations about that as well in the past, but it's hard, right? Because sometimes a client doesn't respond to email. They don't pick up the phone. You leave them a voicemail. They don't respond to that voicemail, but you send them a text message and they respond within 30 seconds. And we have a few clients like that. And, we'll figure out our way around that, but it's important that whatever communication you're having, it can go and be actioned. If somebody messages me on WhatsApp or on a text message, I always tell them it's like, hey, have you emailed this to contact@cataaccounting.com? That way it can go right into our flow. Here it might get lost. And that's helped a lot.
I actually like that. Have you, and if you can, here it may get lost. I like that. I'm going to
Yeah.
steal that.
It's just true. Oh, please rip off and duplicate. R&D, as Andrew Wall puts it. Another thing, and this is a policy, is you cannot visit our office. I mean, as a policy, we do not accept paper. You cannot visit our office, and we do not do in real life meetings. Those are our general policies. I violate the last two occasionally. For instance, I did a few years ago, and we'd like to reinstate it this year. Do accounting professionals I admire barbecue in September, like after the long weekend, just have people over. We've got a nice place. It's a great time to come and hang out and whatever. But I wouldn't have a client here who wouldn't be here otherwise. Like a client who is kind of a cold contact before I met them, that wouldn't have them here, right? But as we all know, a lot of our client base probably comes from friends and family, and that can, blur those lines significantly. All right, so let's talk about the anatomy of a frustrating situation. First, try to understand the other party's perspective. Do they have a valid point? Where are they coming from? Are there other emotions driving things uh, before? That's hilarious, Matt. That's awesome. I want to ask you some other questions about mortgage brokering and stuff, but let's connect another time because I think we could have some interesting combos. Never respond when you're angry. I know Tanya had this process. She used to write these novella emails and then be like, "Hey, this happened. This is what I'm going to respond. What do you think?" And we'd hash it out over the course of a week, and then she'd respond once it was cleared up. Now I know she does that with Charlie, and so I'm not in that process anymore. But never respond when you're angry. There was actually Jake introduced me to a book called The Eighth Habit. It was I think it's Stephen Covey follow up to was it the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People or
Yeah,
something?
there's seven. This is the eighth habit. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that's early in that book is there's a time between when an event occurs and when you react where you get to think and make a decision. And that I think is very important, especially as a professional. Because if you just react to what happens, that's not professionalism. That you're not using your brain, you're just emotionally responding, right? All right, we're gonna hop up here quickly. All right, so never respond when you're angry, walk away right out and get AI to improve it, talk to a friend or colleague. Apply the sandwich method. You see this with feedback all the time. Positive, the room for improvement, positive. Similar. Recognize the frustration, provide the solution, and work toward a forward-looking and friendly closing or conclusion, or resolution to the issue. Take ownership. Mistakes are going to happen. What you do next shows your character. We talk about that all the time. When you hide mistakes, that shows dishonesty. When you're upfront and upright, up and so on, then it shows that you're transparent. You're really to work together. You're part of that team. I'm going to skip ahead to the poll question so we can have it so Matt can get his CPD and we'll go back after. So, how can you best improve your professionalism? A, increase my active listening skills. B, be friendlier with clients. C, maintain the same standards whether someone is watching or not, aka follow my own workflows, policies, and processes. Or D, enforce my boundaries. For me, it's C, 100%. I go off my own policies, my own processes all the time, and I need to stop doing it. So, Matt, did you get your answer in? Yeah, there we are. Number D. Yep. All right, awesome. Has everybody had a chance to respond? It looks like we're doing pretty good here. 1, 2, 3. We got 9 out of 15. So we're going to come back to this question. So those people don't have to run. You can answer that question again after.
And I
Thank you,
think
Matt.
if you're not a panelist, you can't answer in the chat for the polls.
Oh, so
I
in the
think so.
Q&A?
There's three people that are, or two people that are attendees. Kirsten's, I put her answer in the chat.
Okay.
Iqbal hasn't said anything about doing
Yeah.
any.
Sherry, the poll isn't working because Tanya's not here, so you got to put your answer in the chat.
Yes, so I'm just
Just a reminder for some people that might have come in late.
yeah. So put your answer in the chat. But the people that are attendees could also, I have it, they could
Oh, okay.
shout out their answer if they wanted to. I'm not
Okay.
very good at this, and I missed 90% of what Jonathan said. So anyway, I will watch the replay.
All right. Okay. So just back to the frustrating situation. We've talked about these things. I kind of went through them really quickly. Were there any questions or comments about any of this stuff? Any advice for how to deal with a frustrating situation?
I think sometimes when it gets into a frustrating situation, like I was trying to get a lady on Zoom yesterday for, an initial discovery call, and she was having troubles, and then she was on, and it was in and out. Obviously, where she was, it wasn't probably great Wi-Fi or something. So ended up doing Parsh on Zoom, but we were talking on the phone. So it's kind of, for me, it's being able to have some leeway in order to get what I want done. But at the same time, I still have to have those boundaries of time, effort. My 5 year
Yeah.
cleanup that I finally got a signed contract and payment, which I got within the same day for the Discovery Diagnostic Review, has been sitting in my desk tray for 38 days.
Oh dear.
Well, and it's just the guy's not big tech savvy, and he wanted his administrator. She goes, "Well, can't I just sign it?" I said, "No, it has to be an owner of the company. The person I'm dealing with is David. David has to sign it."
Yeah. You
So,
have to have an authorized signatory. That's just the way it goes.
yeah,
But I agree with you on the leeway. I've done a lot of those times where it's like, okay, we get on Zoom, but the person's audio isn't working. So, okay, we'll chat on the phone and we'll use Zoom for the screen sharing or things like that.
yeah,
Um, I think when it comes to most communication, it's better to be liked than to be right,
yes,
especially at the beginning. Because if you want to deliver a message and the person doesn't like you, they're not going to receive your message. Doesn't matter if you're right or not. So. All right, let's move on. So some do's and don'ts, training yourself and the team. Do use people's names and say them properly. Names matter. There's nothing somebody likes to hear more than their name. Isn't that right, Alan? Or Carol or Diane. Use bullet points for complex situations. Use pictures, diagrams, charts, graphs, those kind of things. Keep your small talk light, shallow, and friendly. Your video, make sure it's clean, well lit. Don't show up in a completely unprofessional setting. Don't act unprofessional. Don't try and do a video call from somewhere that's super noisy, things like that. And then follow up. Just a follow up email is usually what I do, follow up to our conversation, and then just the main bullets that we talked about. Thank God for all this AI tracking of your meeting notes. Now I don't have to be writing notes during the meeting. I can just go in after, grab those notes, take what I want out of them, and throw that in the email. So it makes it a lot easier. Don't use text speak. Avoid the use of aggressive punctuation in all caps. I know I only ever use one exclamation mark usually, but I tend to use exclamation marks far too often. I also use a little bit of that text speak, and that's something I need to get away from. Last night, I educated a room full of CPAs who didn't know what TLDR was when they were talking about, are you losing money by doing way more work than what's required? And the guy was saying there's an example of every quarter the board report was 400 pages long and nobody ever read it. And that's exactly what I said, TLDR. And everybody's like, what's TLDR? Too long, didn't read. And that's the truth of it. If you send something that's technical, legalese, people are not going to read it. They're just going to trust that hopefully it's correct. Clarity, don't write a novel that's difficult to read. A lot of people these days are reading on mobile devices. So keep in mind, short, sweet bullets are your friend, those kind of things. With small talk, be careful about oversharing, complaining about things, or getting into sensitive topics. Politics, religion, various things like that can really create for some awkward situations. Don't take professional calls in public or high traffic noisy areas. We talked about that. And don't assume the client remembers what to do. We'll schedule it and we'll do it. You need to follow up. Remind them, I am expecting you to do X by Z date. And you're going, once that's done, then I can do Y by A date or something like that. Before we go on, any other do's or don'ts that I might have missed? I'm going to add a couple here with the video. Again, body language, right? Like I always tell people that when I'm doing a meeting, it's like my notes are up here. So if I'm looking up here and typing, I'm taking notes about this call. And if I'm looking down here, I'm looking at you. And I get that out of the way at the beginning so they don't think I'm answering somebody else's email or something along those lines. And then, of course, the body language with like just being closed off, being on camera, being friendly, being presentable. Those things I think are all important. A wise man, and I've said this before, a wise man or wealthy man once told me you have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth, and they should be used in accordant, in proportion. So, all right. So, in summary, professionalism is a culmination of a variety of traits. We talked about the robot, the bestie, the avoider, and the balanced advisor communication styles. We talked about the digital empathy framework and really understanding that quite often when somebody is aggressive or upset, there's something else at play in the background. Set boundaries, but do so with grace. Always offer alternatives and try to be accommodating without being a pushover. And for goodness sakes, make sure you get paid appropriately. We talked about the anatomy of frustrating interaction, some do's and don'ts. But in conclusion, really, I would say be clear, be complete, be correct, be on time, and be kind. All right. So, did anybody not answer the poll? I think we got everybody. All right. So, professionalism is not the job you do, it's how you do the job. It's the conduct, the aims, and the qualities that characterize or mark a profession or a professional person. It's about being a human being that others can rely on. I just thought this was a really good quote. It's from a book called The Trusted Advisor. All right. So, any questions, discussion, things like that? We'd love it if you would connect with us on social if you're not already. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that, especially coming from you. Nothing in the Q&A. Kristen, thank you. I'm glad that we got your answers there and they have been recorded. She did answer both poll questions. Am I sharing my deck? The deck was sent to Tanya. I believe she'll distribute it when she sends out the CPD, but it's there. And this is going to be on YouTube anyway. Right. Stephanie, did you want to get into your frustrating situation at all a bit more?
The sketchy situation, and this goes back quite a long time ago. But I was working with a HVAC company in Durham region, and he had come from a situation where he was a sole proprietor, and a competitor passed away, and he was able to purchase the competitor's company. So one of the frustrating parts was,
Good luck on the election, Diane. Sorry.
good luck. And so one of the frustrating things is that he was very used to treating the business bank account like his personal piggy bank. So there
Nobody's
was,
ever encountered that before.
oh no, God help us. And the other part of the frustration is that he he had a line of credit that he had personally, and he used quite a lot of that personal line of credit in order to acquire the corporation. And he had asked me at one point to do certain journal entries in order to show that he had paid some of the corporation's debt from his line of credit, that he had put cash into the corporation's bank account from the line of credit, et cetera, and so on. And he
And
said,
these things were not factual.
no, they were factual, but he was not able to provide me with details in order for me to be able to do the work and show the investment personally in the corporation accurately. And he said, well, it's about $75,000. And I said, well, that's nice. Can you give me the backup for it? Well, just trust me, like, because he was in the process of applying for a BDC loan, because he was getting into geothermal and stuff like that as part of the HVAC, because he was, and honestly, he was a very clever guy, and he could have done really well. And I kept saying, look, if you want me to do this, I need the backup, or I need you to put it in writing saying that this is what you're telling me. You want me to do X, Y, or Z, and you want me to put it in the books this way, even though that there's no backup or whatever. And he said, oh, okay, fine. And then I said, okay, he invested $75,000 in the corporation, da 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 da. I had put it to a shareholder account, no details, and he didn't get the loan from BDC and he blamed me. And I said, look, I told you what was going to happen. If you weren't able to provide details, I'm sure BDC wanted those details. You weren't able to provide them. It's not my fault you didn't get the loan. It's the accuracy of your books was questionable. And you weren't able to provide the details of how you acquired the corporation. So naturally, the BDC is going to go, okay, this is kind of borderline or even sketchy. So but I ended up after he called me up one day and was yelling at me for him not getting the loan. I said, "Look, I'm going to walk away. First of all, you asked me to do something that was borderline. Second of all, you're treating your corporation bank account like it's your personal piggy bank, and I've warned you about this before, and you're not treating me like I know what I'm talking about, like I'm a professional, like I'm the expert here." And I ended up having to sack the guy. He wasn't happy about that, but I said, "Look, I can't work with you if you're going to continue to, you know, do what I'm advising you against." And his lawyer even told him. I was like, his accountant told him. And it's like, okay, you're
You're
not going
getting
to
this
listen
from
to
all
them.
these. That's the thing is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right?
Exactly,
And as much as
exactly.
you want people to see people succeed, they have to do most of the heavy lifting. And that
Yeah.
might be like having a signed agreement, having
Oh, I
record.
did have one. And I continue to use one to this day, and I've actually had to go back to my lawyer two or three times and say, "Okay, can we tweak this, please? Because I found that either this isn't clear or I don't have a clause that covers this." So, yeah, I mean, and anybody who doesn't want to sign my agreement or wants me to change my agreement so that the protections for me either are reduced or don't exist anymore, I won't work with.
I think that's a wise strategic business decision. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, if you
Um,
want me to change my agreement, I'm sorry. Would you change the agreement for like the purchase and sale of a home? No. So why would that be okay for dealing with another professional?
yeah, some people just feel like they have their own standards, and
Well, it's
whatever it is, it's what I said it was.
But
Well,
I mean there you're going to run into people like that.
yeah,
They're out there. That's I mean I've even worked in a company where the CEO of the company we're not supposed to take cash deposits for homes for sale, and that cash came in and he took it. But I'm like, I'm not touching it. I'm not going to the bank. If you want to take it, then that's on you. I'm not like I'm following my anti-money laundering rules here, but but he
yeah,
would just do stuff like that. And I've been in business for 30 years, blah 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 blah. I can do what I want
great.
attitude, right?
Yeah,
well, you go ahead, you take the risk.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a massive company and whatever. I mean, I'm, whatever he wanted to do was up to him. Like he's was the whatever the big wig, but for me, like, and then in another place I worked where we went into receivership, and then I was told that we're not supposed to pay anybody any money, and then they asked me to cut $1 million check for the lawyers, and I was like, I made this VP of finance sign off on it. I
okay.
even called a CPA to ask because I'm like worried about my reputation, right?
Right, yeah.
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 No, it makes good
And
sense.
that's just in the regular corporate world. That's not even dealing with, business owners. So yeah, I feel like any business owners like that, I just cut them loose. I just don't want them.
Yeah.
It's interesting because really, I think one of the most important things that any small, especially solopreneur, needs to do is they need to make sure that they are not under severe pressure to bring in money, right? Because then you're more likely to step over those lines. You're more likely to say yes when you should say no. You're more likely to accept less than what you're worth. All those different factors that can create bad situations
Yeah.
driven
Oh,
by
I
need.
I won't work with anybody anymore that that thinks that what I do doesn't require any kind of expertise. It's like you're a glorified receptionist kind of mindset. The if
Do you
my
think that
wife
comes
can
from,
balance the personal checkbook, she can do the bookkeeping. And it's like, well, okay, fine. If you think your wife can do that, let your wife do it.
yeah, see how much she likes dealing with you?
I don't know if it's so much dealing with him as in, the triple the size CPA bill at the end of the year for fixing um, you know, Mrs.
They-
Business owner's stupidity,
We
lack of
we've had
knowledge.
a couple situations recently where we're inheriting clients from air quote bookkeepers who really aren't doing what they ought to be doing. We had the latest one. Companies does one project at a time, usually between five and about seven and a half, $10 million. And their rate is 10%. They get 10% of whatever the project size is. And I open
Mhm.
up their books. It's like, well, you have zero expenses recognized in your corporation. You have about $234,000 of of revenue. And I know that based on our conversation, this should be over $1 million. And all of your sales are going to customer deposits and or work in progress. And it's like, I don't know what your bookkeeper is doing, but they're not doing bookkeeping. I don't know what's going on there. Sorry to tell you and break the bad news, but none of this is usable by an accountant to file your corporate tax. Now we got that client, at least a verbal. I haven't seen if they signed the proposal yet, but it's like, come on. And then I speak to my favorite is the entrepreneurs, the startups. It's like, oh, I'll worry about the bookkeeping later. I'll worry about the bookkeeping later. I'll worry about the bookkeeping later. And I always coach them right at the beginning. It's like, you need a data room. This is what's going to be used when you're trying to raise funds, when you're trying to seek investors or get loans. Okay. Without this data room, nobody's going to take you seriously. In this data room, what you need are your signed agreements, not agreements that you typed up and that are unsigned or signed only by you and not by the other party. Fully executed agreements. This needs to be organized so you look like you have a clue of what you're doing. And you need to have all your banking, all your balance sheet, your income statements, things like that. Because if you get somebody, let's say you get an angel who's like, you know what, I'd like to consider investing. Let me have access to your data room. Let's see your books. You open up and then you tell them, I'm going to need a few weeks to get the books to you. Well, right off the bat, you look like a massive risk, and they should not put their money with you. So anyway, we could go on about this all day. Thanks, everyone.